The Ankler podcast sponsors include Picture House, presenting Porcelain War, the Oscar-nominated documentary chronicling 3 Ukrainian artists who choose to stay in their native country, armed with their art, their cameras, and for the first time in their lives, their guns. Art is resistance in this film, Deadline declares an artistic triumph. For your consideration, Best Documentary Feature.
Natalie, what information do you have about the skateboarding corgi?
Not a lot for you, Richard. Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. It's Thursday, January 30th. I'm Elaine Lowe, author of the series Business Newsletter, and I'm joined here by the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield, newly returned from that crunchy snow in Park City, Utah. Have you recovered from what I've heard is a very cold Sundance so far, Richard?
A lukewarm Sundance, I think. You know what? I love Sundance. I love going. When I was younger, the physical hardship of it was sort of part of the challenge and the fun, and I could scoff at the people who...
Walking up hills both ways in the snow?
Yeah. At this age, maybe that part is a little less fun. But
I think Richard's a fan of Cincinnati all of a sudden, Elaine. Just telling you right now. I think he's going to vote Cincinnati on the vote here.
They talk a lot about it in Cincinnati. In the arts, there's this trolley that goes around.
Yeah, on flat land.
Sounds convenient.
Yeah. The other place is called Boulder, Richard. Trust me, it's not flat. It's not easy getting around. So
yeah, been having a lot of good thoughts about the being at sea level and riding a trolley. So
having some Cincinnati chili or whatever they call that, Skyline chili. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that other voice on our pod today is, of course, the Wake Up's Sean McNulty, who is once again deep in an earnings season burrow, which is why I'm steering the ship today. We're going to find out if he's having a great quarter, guys. But first, I want to mention that later in the show, we'll have Natalie Jarvie, author of Ankler Media's new standalone newsletter, Like and Subscribe, where she's covering all things creator economy. But our first order of business here is Comcast earnings, parent of NBC Universal and Peacock, which Sean broke down in ever granular detail in the Wake Up newsletter this morning. Always a really brilliant read. And it sounds like the takeaway here, Sean, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, broadband business challenged. Theme parks business improving, but still meh. Peacock, no growth year over year in what traditionally should have been a solid quarter. But thank goodness for that wireless and mobile business, because those revenue gains are offsetting cord-cutting losses. Does that about cover it?
Yeah, not bad. And the thing that did not talk about was the movie business, which actually had a lot of good news, and they kind of was like fifth on their list of like
they didn't
things
start
going
out with Wicked, huge hit.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That was really baffling, and there's a lot of things that go into how are we going to arrange the call, guys, and a lot of communications experts, and I'm like, how did you miss that one? You literally had and you have another one coming, and it's like great news, and it was like really just kind of like, all right, sure, lead with mobile service that is literally 3.4% of your annual revenue. I mean, it was a little bit like it was more the comms, and the broadband business is the main problem, and they know that, and
that's what's dragging on the stock today.
Yeah, and it was worse than they kind of had told people before, so that's kind of where their mind was at, but they kind of missed a few things here that I'm like, you could have gone in a different direction on this stuff, so It is what it is. So yes, all the wireless talk you want in the world there, Elaine, but not a lot about Peacock, which as you said, it had zero growth, same amount of subscribers in Q3 as it had here in Q4.
How many subscribers is that total now?
There's 36 million, and this is the same quarter here, Q4, where Netflix added 4.8 million in the U.S. and Canada,
in one quarter.
In one quarter.
One region.
And Peacock added, in the same region. Yeah, exactly. And Peacock added zero. So it's like, but the thing is, Elaine, no one even brought that up. Like that's not the thing about Comcast. Like, it's so weird where like, if this is a Paramount call, you'd be talking about it for 20 minutes. And this is the Comcast call, and everybody's like, oh yeah.
To be fair, they've got a lot of other businesses under Comcast. They got theme parks, they got wireless. I get it. But let's talk about Peacock for a little bit. In Q4, they lost, over 370 mil, which is a narrowed loss, which we like to see, yeah?
Yeah.
But still over 370 million.
It's which side of the coin you want to look at, Elaine. Yes, that is the second lowest amount we've ever lost in the quarter, but it's also, we lost $370 million in 3 months on this thing. And again, there's still no... oh, by the way, this will turn a profit in 2027. No talk. No, nobody's asking that question. I think analysts have kind of given up at this point. Of just like, they just kind of accept it for what it is. But
there's no milestone. There's no, here's when we're going to turn the corner. Here's when we'll hit profitability.
Not even, the losses will be less. The thing is that they have NBA coming next in the Q4 this year.
Which should give them a decent boost, you would think.
Well, yes, but it's also, there's a nice check going out to the NBA for those rights. So you got to kind of.
How big is that check?
Well, how much you're going to allot to Peacock is the question, because there's NBC and Peacock and so on and so forth. So you're talking a couple $1 billion. So,
I just did a little math. You want a little math quiz?
Well, I love
Give us
it,
math,
please.
Richard.
I'm throwing numbers. Let's go. Hop in the ring.
I divided the number of Peacock subscribers, which says 34 million.
36 million.
I divided the number of minutes watched of Little House on the Prairie last year by the number of subscribers.
On Peacock.
Right. By the number of subscribers. So how many minutes per subscriber of Little House on the Prairie do you think were watched last year?
Richard, I didn't go to school for math.
I got to do, boy. I mean, I know both numbers. I just can't do the math quick in my head.
It was hard. I had to ask ChatGPT to do this because I couldn't do that.
I don't know, 120. I don't know, whatever.
382.35 minutes per subscriber.
Oh.
We're watching Little House on the Prairie reruns, which
last year, okay,
which went off the air before anyone in the demo was born.
For Peacock meant something else entirely. Yeah,
how many seasons did that run for?
I think
9?
9? Yeah, 8 or 9 is
Okay.
where I was in land on that. But yeah, exactly.
He had 1 hour episodes, so.
Yeah, right. They were 1 hour episodes back in the day. But the thing is also, like Peacock is just a different beast, Elaine, where it's like it's U.S. only, like compared to Paramount Plus and Max and everybody else who has global ambitions. Peacock is a U.S. only product, and they're not positioning it very well in the sense that, hey, don't view us this way. Stop looking at our subs this way. They kind of don't talk about it much at all, but like you can tell a story here. The point of Peacock is to capture the dollars that are leaving or have left the linear TV business that they want to recapture, right? So in theory, if our media line, which combines Peacock and the linear business that, it's NBC and the cable networks for now, they'll be spinning them off next year. But as long as that kind of net starts to rise of combined together, then that's the thesis, which they're not even really communicating, but and it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen where it's like, okay, we're last year was the low point of profitability. This year we made more profit than we did last year. They're not even telling that story.
Well, you talk about messaging, and the one piece of messaging we did get from Comcast head Mike Cavanaugh, who runs NBCU,
right.
is that what did he say? Quote: "We're not really running a Peacock only strategy. We're running a broadcast plus streaming strategy, and looking to optimize that over the years ahead." What did he mean by that? Because to me, it sounded a little bit like, isn't that everyone's strategy who has both linear and streaming?
Yeah, this was for Peacock, which is it? Netflix doesn't say this stuff. And that's just where or any other streaming service, like we have a dedicated purpose for this thing. I don't know. Honestly, I said in the newsletter, I don't know what this means. And I don't even know what's going on. Again, they don't know how to communicate what they're doing with the business. And, those losses we mentioned, $370 million, but the whole line as a whole made $3.1 billion. It's not like the whole TV division is losing money. Like they're making money. Peacock is a loss leader to kind of, again, capture these dollars that are siphoning out of linear TV. We want to, get these ad dollars and affiliate revenue over here. And they're just not really communicating what the plan is here. And I don't know. I just kind of give up at this point.
And it's not for any lack of terrific content either, especially which, as you point out, and I think we've all noticed, their movies do spectacularly well on Netflix. Like,
right.
I was taking a look at the top 10 list of movies globally on Netflix. Secret Life of Pets, Secret Life of Pets 2, Minions, Rise of Gru, which has been on the top 10 chart for 10 weeks, Despicable Me 2, which has been charting for 16 weeks globally in the top 10 and 21 weeks in the U.S. And then you want to look at just the U.S. top 10 list on Netflix, and there are a ton of more universal titles that include Despicable Me 1 and Boss Baby. So it's not like people aren't viewing these titles on streaming. They're just watching them somewhere else. And of course, there are licensing dollars in play here, so it's not like...
I hope so, yeah.
Getting a big check. They are getting a big check.
They're providing all of Netflix's viewership. It's, that's...
When does their contract with Netflix end?
For the animated titles, because again, those are Illumination, that's a specific Illumination combination deal, but it's not soon. Put it that way. They just actually recut it, I think, maybe a year or two ago, Richard. So
there's no talk about clawing that back for
Peacock.
Well, those movies, again, they premiere on Peacock and then they go, then they're windows. They're not going to live there forever, so on and so forth. But again, how the business works, you make something, you use it, you sell it to someone else. If it does well, you charge them more for it. It's all again, a positive narrative, Elaine. It's like, but you got to just, again, the stuff goes to Peacock in the U.S. and then globally we sell it everywhere. We're a Sony arms dealer, and here's how it works. And we get money from here. Okay. There's just no narrative building at all about what's going on here for what the plan is. That is different than Max and Netflix. It's like you have to explain this kind of thing, and they're a cable company and they kind of stick with the cable narrative. And the movie studio, which includes the TV studio, the Universal Studio.
You said it had the most profitable year since at least 2017, right?
And you wouldn't know. They did not mention that. They had $1.4 billion worth of profit, and the studio line, nary a mention. And it's like, maybe, that's what just, it's not all the numbers. I mean, like the broadband numbers are bad. Peacock is still losing money. Yes, there's, they have a lot of looming questions here. The theme parks, as you say, are kind of middling, but there's a lot of positive narratives that they're just not even putting out there. And I'm like, guys, why am I the one finding all this stuff in the numbers and putting it out? So,
all right, Comcast, hear that? You have a comms expert you have right here.
Yeah, free advice here.
Who's been tooting the horn for you.
So what's the Occam's razor if they're not talking about Peacock? And
yeah, I mean, because Wall Street doesn't react to it. And to your answer, Richard, that is what's the real answer here?
And what are they really thinking of is the future?
Well, 2/3 of this business is broadband and cable TV. So Peacock is relative to everything else still kind of a blip after these last few years.
NBCU is essentially a third of the business, not 2/3. So I get why, the broadband thing is the most of the problem. The stock was, I think it was down 12% today. And that's based on the broadband subs loss of the biggest loss they've had, which is only 139,000 subscribers, but that's not happened before. So Richard, this is kind of why Wall Street doesn't ask a lot of questions about this. Again, NBCU is relatively, quote unquote, protected inside of this big company, which if you're looking, Elaine, on a call where you have this bad news for broadband, you're looking for other positive stuff to tell Wall Street. And you're going with wireless, which is a $4 billion a year business. And now you're NBCU, which is a third of your business, and you're making good, you have some positive narratives here. So it was just a little like, what's going on here, guys?
It was a little bit of a head scratcher from Comcast.
Thank you, Elaine. Exactly right. A little bit of a head scratcher. So we'll see what transpires going forward.
I would say if you can't tell what's going on, then something's going on that you can't see.
Exactly. And they were asked, I will say, are you still open to partnerships? And they were very much like, we are very open to partnerships.
Paramount Plus cough. What's happening there?
They didn't name check Paramount this time, which I did in the last call. But they were very much, yes, we are open to partnerships. We're open to bundles. So that was driven home. There was no kind of obfuscation about that.
It just sounds to me like they're not investing too much in the story right now because the story's about to change dramatically.
All right. Well, TBD on Peacock. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But moving on to a different entertainment giant with very clear messaging. Richard, you and I were at the Egyptian Theater yesterday for Netflix's big slate presentation. They pulled out the razzle dazzle. They had Tina Fey, John Mulaney, a surprise Ben Affleck cameo on stage to preview all of their TV and film offerings this year.
Wrestlers, what was her name?
WWE coming
Rhea
out.
Ripley, that is like the fourth time I have seen her in
Your best
the last
friend now,
3
Elaine?
months.
Yeah, exactly.
Our other staffer, Matthew, who was there, was like, I think I've seen Rhea Ripley more times than I've seen my own family these last few months. But it was a big, it was basically an assault of programming on a scale that only Netflix can seem to commit to at this point. We've got the final seasons of Stranger Things, Squid Game, Cobra Kai coming up. On the film side, there's a new Knives Out, the Guillermo del Toro film Frankenstein, Mindy Kaling's Running Point, and of course, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's Rip. What do you make of it, Richard? We saw the barrage of trade announcements about it coming out this morning.
Yeah, it was kind of like their own CinemaCon that they can do. They could do a one company CinemaCon, and
it was a little like TCA and CinemaCon combined yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it kind of adds up because they're kind of producing as much as all the legacy studios combined, so they can almost pull it off. But I was making a list of the genres that they touch on that have been totally abandoned by studios and networks. And
like rom-coms or what's on your list?
All of comedy, which includes rom-coms, which includes rom-coms, sort of all of thrillers. So comedy and thriller used to be about 2/3 of movies, and now it's been completely abandoned by the studios. Prestige and costume and, redoing things. They have a Judy Blume recast and a
Forever
African-American.
Yeah.
It's just the list of sort of places that they go that they may not be revolutionary, but
they're interesting and maybe they're comforting.
Well, John Mulaney said this thing. He said, I'm not going to do anything that's new, but I'm going to do all the old things in a different order, so it's going to feel like it's new.
Right. You want to talk about John Mulaney's live talk show, which is coming back after its 5-6 day run last year, where he told us from the stage that, quote, not since Harry and Meghan has Netflix given more money to someone without a specific plan.
That was my favorite. That was my favorite line, I will say.
Yeah. And I think Bella Baharia talked about it in the speech. Like, they keep just surprising and they keep doing things that are different and trying things. A lot of their presentation was ironically about their returning series and about things that weren't surprising. It was
Squid Game, Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Season 5 is no longer a shock, but they didn't focus much on their new series much. So we'll see about that. But they keep pulling these rabbits out of the hats and just taking chances on things in ways that the traditional networks and certainly the traditional studios don't go near anymore. So it's their era. I say it again.
Yeah. And from the stage, Bella Bajaria yesterday was also taking on the notion of sort of what is prestige TV anyway? Right. What does that really even mean? And, blasting that New York Times headline on Is Creativity Dead? It felt like a little bit of a counterpoint in this maybe invisible argument that Netflix is having with, I don't know, the media community or the industry community in this time of risk aversion and defaulting to reliable hits. Sean, you were watching remotely. What was your take?
Yeah. So this is such a big event. They invited all the New York people to the Paris Theater to watch the event in Los Angeles. So it's just like, and now Ben Affleck, I'm like, people are clapping. I'm like, he's not here.
Can't hear you.
I'm like, nobody can hear you. What do you? It's fine. Clap if you want. Yeah, but it's just that tonnage factor, that kind of stands out, and you want to kind of have those moments, Elaine, and dominating the conversation, right? What does Netflix want to do? They want to be talked about, buzzed about, and that's Richard, to your point. That's what they're going after here. And it's kind of what the goal of it was, I guess, Elaine. I don't know, what was your takeaway on it?
It felt very much so like, here is our incredibly robust slate for 2025. And it felt a little bit to me from some of our conversations afterward, too, while we were there. It kind of feels like it's the first year where we're back into whatever we want to call the new normal. This feels like what it is, where we're in a post-strike environment. All these productions are kind of back on track where they were supposed to be in development and production, where there's no bottleneck, there's no lag now. So this kind of feels like the first new normal, signs of new normal that we've seen for 2025. I'll be curious to see if that's what we perceive from the rest of the studios as well. But also just this sense that I don't know. I got this real, we want to be comfort food and prestige TV, and a reminder that, we're all those things in one. Like the Tina Fey adaptation of The Four Seasons, the Alan Alda 1981 film of the same name, is, an 8-part limited series.
I mean, they're really going for, we're not one kind of TV, that we are all of TV. And the one statistic that stood out for me, it's been a constant conversation of why do they make movies? What's the point of movies? Why don't they just make shows?
She got the IMAX question during the Q&A.
Yeah, they get more bang for their buck. And if they're going to make movies, why don't they release them? And that endlessly. Did you catch the number of movies that an average Netflix subscriber watches a month?
All right. Yes, I did. But all right, this is back to the universal conversation. This is kids rewatching movies several times. So I wouldn't say that this average number is indicative of it was 7 a month or something?
Yeah, the number according to Bella is 7 compared to the 2 theatrical movies a year most American viewers watch.
That list you just laid out, Elaine, and it's okay, those are 5 animated, 6 animated movies. How much is there? It's Netflix as the babysitter in terms of the movie stuff. So I'm putting that stat aside.
7 movies a month is I was just do these people work? Like,
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
How are you watching 7 movies? I don't watch 7 movies a month.
I had a follow-up, Elaine, but I couldn't ask because I was in New York. I'm like, hey, wait a second.
You raised your hand and nobody called on you. I don't know what
how
happened,
many of those
Sean.
are Illumination movies that are watched 20 times in a month? But,
Nonetheless,
Nevertheless.
you get a sense that you want to know, like, what are movies doing in their whole ecosystem. They're doing a lot in their ecosystem.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just. I mean, look, the thing they're not doing, Elaine, is like the $230 million Gray Mans. Like, no, we're not doing those anymore. And it's like, but there is a price point at which these work, and the Rip, the Carry On, it's like, yeah, there's a place for these here, and they do very well for us, and they get great engagement. They play globally, et cetera, et cetera. So
nuts and bolts thrillers, like every studio used to make like 4 or 5 of those a year, and they all did, B- results, and now nobody does them anymore.
But they did also release, the Slate document, and I did some counting, back to more math. Elaine, I know you're just the excitement on
I don't
your
know
face
where
as
you find the time, Sean.
I know where exactly by all my great hobbies that I have. So the Slates, they released this document about early February every year. Last year's Slate, I think, had about 55 movies on it. This year was 41. So, like, if you're asking if they're turning the spigot down, this includes documentaries, includes animation, and I'm going to break the numbers I'm breaking down in the Wake Up on Friday, but I'm like, all right, there's a little bit of a calibration here, but to Richard's point, there's a big role here. Is it 60 a year? No. Is it doing $200 million movies? Really, that bang for the buck? No. Outside of a Narnia, which is going to be an event and it already has IP and so on and so forth, but it is interesting to see the dials being turned back a little bit, but it's still very vibrant. And to Richard's point, playing across many genres. I think I counted there's like 5 straight up comedies next year, not even rom-coms. I was like, good for you guys. Congratulations.
I mean, that's got to be 4 more than any other studio is making.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Of all the studios, across the board. Yeah.
Well, speaking of film, Netflix did announce today news of an acquisition from Sundance, the Felicity Jones, Joel Edgerton drama Train Dream. So let's talk about the indie film world in particular now that we're more than halfway through the festival. Richard, you wrote in one of your columns earlier this week that this year has been, quote, an especially dire Sundance, and you even used the term extinction event. My kind of impression coming from TV land is that the indie film world has kind of always been scrappy and running up that hill, So, like, what makes it feel different this year?
Well, 2 deals when it's now 2/3 of the way done is pretty low. And it's, the point of Sundance has always been that you've got a few movies that you come in and just, they're coming from nowhere and they just blow people's socks off, and they create real events. And you look back at last year, there were a bunch of those. There was that went on to have Lives Beyond. There was Real Pain, Thelma, Love Lives Bleeding, and it didn't necessarily become huge hits, but they definitely had life beyond the festival. And you just didn't get that feeling. There were a couple that people really liked, a couple that were already acquired. There was an A24 movie with Rose Byrne that played really well here. But
If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You.
Yes, which is my favorite movie of the festival, actually. But you had a lot of movies that were kind of set up. You kind of, Sundanceology, you kind of look at like what's at the biggest theater, which is the Eccles stage in prime time on Friday, Saturday nights, and all that. And so those movies are sort of set up to be the big movies. And you had a lot of kind of disappointments in those slots. You always had 2 camps in Sundance. It's sort of, from the very beginning, that sort of lived side by side. You have the kind of social justice films, and then you had the kind of, scrappy independence, the Little Miss Sunshines, the Steven Soderbergh films, all that. And they sort of live together. And there's a balance united by that. They're both made for cheap. And it felt like this year, the social justice arm of that, which is traditionally not where the big hits of Sundance have come out of that side, overwhelmed it. And on the other side, you had a lot of films that just seemed like, they needed another draft. They needed another round of cuts. They needed, at the beginning, people sitting down and saying, what is it we're trying to say here? What is the point of this movie? Where's this go? What happens after we set up our quirky premise? So, I don't necessarily blame Sundance as much as it feels like the indie world is not swinging for the fences right now.
So a bit of a muted crop of films this year.
Yeah. You get in this way where you don't produce hits, so people stop trying to be hits, and it just creates a very unhealthy cycle.
And Richard, I'd say, I mean, the thing that, look, festivals have off years, even Sundance, if you went back and does this feel, I mean, now my question really was reading your pieces was like, does this feel like an off year, or does this really feel more like there's maybe something larger,
some kind of slippery slope that we're on the top
that's why I kind of was like kind of curious where you were feeling about that.
Because today in your column from Thursday, Richard, you wrote that the indie film world is, quote, held back by a calcified studio system that seems increasingly at odds with the times in which we live.
Well said.
Who's that guy? Yeah, right.
Yeah. It feels like the road to indie success has not been well trod lately. That studios have a very hard time knowing how to market these films. They've kind of gone out of the mid-range business, which is where a lot of these things creep up to. And a result of that is you just have an ecosystem that doesn't feel like they're playing for back in the 90s. I mean, you had a lot of movies that seemed like they were really like playing like these were movies that were ready for the world to see them, that were like people operating at their highest level, that taking their tiny little budgets and making like amazing things with them. And you did not feel like they were swinging for the fences here. And maybe next year will be better. It'll turn around. Last year was better, so this isn't a
okay, so it's not all doom and gloom, your outlook, because, I've noticed that not everybody agrees with your take, particularly a gentleman at the trades who alluded to a, quote, insufferable attention-craving blowhard. Is that you, Richard?
Yeah, that's me.
So Richard's T-shirt says, I think, someday.
Yes, the lead columnist for Deadline, Mike Fleming, thought I was being an insufferable blowhard and attention-seeking by calling this a problem and saying it's all just fine. And he noted the lack of deals he attributed towards people are taking care of their houses that burned down in the fire. So I didn't hear about any companies that couldn't send any representatives because all their reps were busy cleaning up their fires. But that columnist is a noted apologist for Hollywood's elite whenever they do it. And it's just a bad time to have an off year, and when the indie world is having such trouble. But my hope is that Hollywood's kind of control of the means of distribution and the marketing of indie film, which they haven't done very well with, has kind of stifled everything here. And there's a lot of hope, a lot of reasons to hope that, not next year probably, but maybe 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, that indie filmmakers can kind of seize back the way of distributing these films and find new ways to distribute and market these films and create a new world out of this.
But yeah, Lane, the timing of it, it's interesting, Richard, you mentioned that. We're coming off a fall where indie sector, look, it has its problems, but this is the first year, and track the box office every weekend. We're like, oh, these movies are making money again. Since COVID, 22, 23, it was a bust. I couldn't even really give you a positive narrative in there. 2024, I'm like, all right, we had some things, they're not doing the 60 million they were doing in 2018. Gotcha. But they were doing 30 million, 25 million, real money, not the 5 million or under, which they were doing. So that's, to Richard's point, we're going into the festival, Lane, with that kind of momentum. And even the Oscar nominations are predominantly of this sector. A lot of films that came out of Cannes, which you mentioned, it's all right. And then to have this kind of festival where if the enthusiasm, the product wasn't there, it's we could have, it would have been nice to have that momentum continue. And that's a bit of the sentiment too, where it just felt like we were maybe coming back, and then this kind of didn't, deliver as well as it has in the past, Elaine, maybe.
Yeah, although the indie world is not necessarily on the decline. I know indie filmmaking is where it is right now. But, I've had a really interesting couple of conversations this past week about indie TV making, which is where some indie filmmakers...
Some people were there at Sundance too, right?
Yeah, Mark and Jay Duplass have been big in this area. Cooper Rafe, who 3 years ago sold Cha Cha Real Smooth to Apple TV Plus at Sundance, was back this time with a Mark Ruffalo vehicle indie TV series, which they basically financed and produced and are selling on spec. And that's a whole new emerging model that I just wrote about. So it's interesting to see whereas indie filmmaking is maybe in a little bit of a stunted or struggling position, that's where some of those filmmakers are moving to. But on that note, it seems a fine time to pivot to someone else at the Ankler who was at Sundance this year, Natalie Jarvie, author of Like and Subscribe, a newsletter on the creator economy. We'll be back in just a moment.
The Ankler podcast sponsors include Picture House, presenting Porcelain War, the Oscar-nominated documentary chronicling 3 Ukrainian artists who choose to stay in their native country, armed with their art, their cameras, and for the first time in their lives, their guns. Art is resistance in this film, Deadline declares an artistic triumph. For your consideration, Best Documentary Feature.
Welcome back to the Ankler podcast, and a huge welcome to Natalie Jarvie. Thanks for joining us.
So happy to be here.
Natalie, you're new to the Ankler team, but a familiar face to so many of us here. You and I worked together at Business Insider for a spell with one of the Ankler's newest editors, Allison Brower. You worked with Janice and Allison for years at The Hollywood Reporter, and you most recently worked alongside Katie Rich at Vanity Fair. So you are a very familiar face here.
It's like a little homecoming. It's so great.
Yeah, you're new, but you're home.
Exactly.
And now you're authoring Ankler Media's newest newsletter, which is a standalone subscription centering on the business of being a content creator. So tell us what we should expect from Like and Subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, this feels a bit like a homecoming too, because this is a world that I've written a lot about in my career, and I'm excited to be digging in further with the Ankler and with Like and Subscribe. And, I think the way people should think about it is that this will be, their go-to place for all the kind of industry trade news that they want to know about the creator economy. I want to serve people who both work in this community, creators, executives, representatives, people who understand this world and have been looking for someone who can come in and really write about it with authority and kind of, explore everything that's happening in this space. And I also want this to be a great digest for people who maybe want to learn more about the space. People in Hollywood who know that they should be paying attention to the creator economy but don't quite know where to start. This should be a resource for them too.
Yeah, exactly. The creator economy is a massive space that I think in some ways, like you nodded to, hasn't been treated with the seriousness it deserves in legacy Hollywood, especially by the media that covers legacy Hollywood. Why does it matter for somebody who's not in that space to be paying attention?
Yeah, this is a $250 billion global industry. It's huge. And these creators really do kind of sit at the forefront of oftentimes content innovation, technological innovation. The things that they're doing are, attracting huge eyeballs and lots of people and audiences. And that's where young people are spending their time. YouTube is the dominant entertainment experience in the U.S. among Americans. It beats out Netflix pretty consistently. So these major entertainment platforms all should be paying attention to what's happening on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and trying to figure out how to work with these creators, how to bring those audiences to their platforms, and also how to, tap into, the kind of exciting things that they're doing.
And can we talk about this TikTok ban for a moment, which was the subject of your first Like and Subscribe newsletter? I am obstinately not on TikTok and was vindicated for all of 14 hours while it was blocked off from American users to not have it. But then it was resuscitated almost immediately. And now it's been subject under the Trump administration to like a 75 delay of that ban. So Natalie, in Reddit terms, explain it like I'm 5. What does this all mean? Why should I care? Should Richard be saving all of the pasta recipes he gets off TikTok in anticipation of another ban?
First off, Elaine, that 14 hours, sorry it wasn't longer for you to justify staying off platform. What a week to launch a newsletter about the creator economy, let me say. It was right into the fire for me in terms of, some interesting breaking news. This is a huge deal. And I will start by saying this is something that has been in the ether since 2020, so it's not entirely new. But this is definitely the most serious threat that TikTok has faced. And what happens in the next month or two will have major ramifications across the whole industry. I mean, there's a good chance that the Trump administration finds a way to work out a deal and keep TikTok running in the United States. But it's not a given. There are a lot of people who have to sign off on a deal like that. For starters, ByteDance, TikTok's owner, and the Chinese government have to be on board with a deal. So it's not 100% a given that something will happen. And regardless of what happens with TikTok, we're already seeing this very interesting thing happen where every other platform is rushing in to try to take advantage.
They're courting all of these creators, right? Like
Yes.
YouTube Shorts and Meta, Instagram.
Exactly. They're all, looking for ways to work with these creators. There's another popular app that, showed up on the American shores here recently, RedNote, which is a Chinese
Which I
app.
had not heard of until last weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're, starting to court creators or have been courting creators as well. Meta is the really big one who's, been offering payments to TikTok creators who come on board and, promote their content on Reels on Instagram. And even if TikTok sticks around, this is a huge wake-up call for any creator who was only posting to TikTok or only prioritizing one platform.
I mean, can you really be a single platform creator anymore?
Not really. You really can't. And
I think we learned that from the Vine era, right?
Yes, although,
Elaine had Vine. Elaine had Vine. Come on, Elaine, you had a Vine account, right?
I also did not download Vine. Again, vindicating my choice to not have ephemeral platforms.
That one paid off for you. All right.
Well,
Sorry, Natalie.
memories are short on the internet, and Vine was a long time ago, and a lot of these Gen Z TikTokers were not around for the Vine era. So this has been a big wake-up call for many of them. You really can't be a single platform creator. You have to be on all these platforms. You have to be doing something different on all these platforms, really catering to your audience in each place. And, any creator who maybe was a little too focused on TikTok is probably getting savvy to the fact that they should be on Instagram, they should be on YouTube, they should be these other places. And that could mean that people's reliance on TikTok, will kind of lessen over time, even if ultimately, TikTok does remain in the U.S.
Natalie, what information do you have about the skateboarding corgi?
Not a lot for you, Richard.
TikTok's under furry in action. I'm sure you know that already.
I tend to be partial to the cats of the internet, the grumpy cats and the like. So
Generally, I would say so. But the skateboarding, I mean, it's pretty fantastic how he can turn corners and
I have no idea what you're
up the
talking about,
skateboard.
Richard.
There's a corgi who can ride a skateboard and
I
ride
gathered that part.
down hills, and he can ride.
That wasn't my question.
He can go through traffic, through foot traffic on
okay.
it. It's pretty sensational, and I'd like to hear what kind of brand expansions he's got planned there.
all right, I'll look into that. Maybe I need to give you a section of like and subscribe so you can tell us what you're watching on TikTok every week,
Well,
Richard.
I making the transition to influencer has been sort of the path of this whole thing because I'd like to phase out as quick as possible.
He's going to dump us at the anchor to go TikTok influencing.
Yeah, get to phase out like writing and having ideas would be. And just like have people ask me what moisturizer I use is kind of
Boy. Richard, you realize that's more you of the doing less work factor. This is more work being a creator than.
Well, don't tell me. Don't destroy my dreams, Sean.
At least you don't have to do a lot of writing if you're a creator, but I do look
That's
forward
true.
to the dance that you invent that goes viral
Yeah,
on TikTok.
I'm gonna do get ready with me interviews, videos. I'm gonna.
He'll serenade us with "Hello, Larry."
Whatever you need.
Theme
Yeah.
songs.
That's
No,
it. Weekly serenades. Yeah. All right. The
I'll
list is
have the
coming
whole
together.
thing. Do the face. Put an insect face on my head and all sorts of
All
stuff.
right.
So
The list is never ending. That's the
You
way
get
it
so many
goes.
ideas for your next
So many
newsletters,
ideas.
Natalie.
It's just yeah. He's like
I love it all. Yeah,
This is why we need you here, Natalie, to help
clearly.
us break it down.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Elaine, I think you're the target audience for like and subscribe. I'll tell you everything you need to know.
I will tell you when you have victoriously gotten me to download TikTok, but I might wait until the 75-day ban extension is up.
You
and then
can't
decide.
though, right? Isn't it not available?
Oh, can I not download it anew?
You cannot download
Wow.
TikTok, Elaine.
So she's
Oh,
locked
there you
out.
go.
You're locked
I love to
out.
So
procrastinate.
everybody go
Perfect.
on TikTok and talk about Elaine.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be real tough for you. I've heard that phones that have TikTok downloaded are prized possessions right now.
I've read
so-
this. Yeah. People
How much
are,
can I get for mine?
Richard's on eBay looking this up already.
Yeah, I know. You guys got an offline here, guys. All right, you can brainstorm about your do a column ideas. So Richard, have a classified section.
Everyone, make sure to subscribe to Like and Subscribe. That is at a separate, again, it's a separate standalone newsletter. Isn't that right, Natalie? But the first couple are free, yes?
Yeah, so, it is a separate Substack that you can go subscribe to. We are syndicating my first month or two of columns on the Inkler and making those free. But then after that, you'll have to pay up and come like and subscribe. So hopefully people check it out.
All right. Well, smash that subscribe button. Do they still say that, Natalie? Am I dating myself here?
Oh, no.
I think you are.
Well, nonetheless, smash that subscribe button for Natalie Jarvie's
Stick to
Like
your
and
guns
Subscribe
there,
newsletter. I'm going to stick to it, Sean.
Yeah.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. Go to theankler.com to subscribe to our full suite of newsletters. And if you think we're doing a good job, make sure to leave us a review where you get your podcasts. We would love to update our reviews. And if you don't like it, you could email us at, Sean, what's your email address?
Yeah, exactly. Richard at theankler.com.
Yeah, podcasts at theankler.com for all your feedback. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.